Let's take a quick look now at the markets. Of course, U.S. markets were closed yesterday in observance of the Memorial Day holiday, but we can take a closer look at U.S. futures. Slight movements as U.S. markets open later tonight, Manila time. Okay, finally, a sea of green. We're looking at about a 1% jump for all major indices in the U.S. That's the Dow Jones, S&P 500, and the NASDAQ. There's getting U.S. markets, of course, we're talking about thinner trading volumes. As I just said, we're coming off the back of the Memorial Day holiday. Also, there was a public holiday in Britain, so trading volumes in the past 24 hours have been thinner. There is a positive catalyst, though, and that is the delay of the 50% EU tariffs that the Trump administration has granted to the EU after European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen appealed to the U.S. president. Both sides say talks are now on the fast track, although, again, they have not committed to a timeline at the moment. A lot of traders saying it is still very much a sell the dollar story, given all the uncertainty over the U.S. policy at the moment. As for Asian markets, as of 9:30 at the open, let's see. A bit of a mixed bag there with the ASX 200, Australia's ASX 200. Just up very marginally to around 8,300 over there. South Korea's Kospi down also marginally, and the Nikkei more or less flat. Japan's stock indices, though, have been seeing some positive movement upwards. It's getting a boost from the Trump administration's approval of Nippon Steel's takeover of U.S. Steel, something that the previous administration of Joe Biden had blocked. In China and the UK, China and Hong Kong, we're seeing a lot of declines across tech. Apple suppliers there are under pressure as they face the threat of additional tariffs on their end. Philippine markets now, if we could take a closer look. Oh, well, the big story there, Philippine Stock Exchange has, the Philippine Stock Index, the PSEi, broke through the all-important 6,400 barrier yesterday. That's Monday, May 26, closing at about 63.87. Was that 63.87 or 63.97? 63.89.94. Investors really looking for fresh catalysts there, but not finding much more, and a lot of investors on wait-and-see mode as well. Around 4.7 billion pesos changed hands, but the index remained largely in red the entire day, and finally falling through that 6,400 level sometime around midday, and was just unable to gain any ground after midday. Philippine peso, though, let's take a look. Opening today, ever so slightly stronger at sitting at 55.35 to the dollar at the moment. But as I just said, traders say that it's still very much a sell the dollar kind of a story, which means that the peso is not necessarily strengthening, but it's more the dollar that's losing ground. The peso actually closed yesterday slightly weaker at 55.42 against the greenback. A lot of the traders we've spoken to expecting the currency to hold within those range in the next several weeks, again, for lack of a strong positive or negative catalyst. Okay, let's break down all of those now. We've got Jeconiah Nicolas. He's an equity analyst at First Resources Management and Securities Corporation. Welcome, Jeco, to the set. It's your first time on the set, so we're happy to have you here. As I said, top story, PSEi broke through the 6,400 level. That's a pretty significant move. Is there any fresh catalyst to look forward to? What are you telling your investors?
So as of now, we don't actually have a fresh catalyst. However, the PSEi, we think that the PSEi will try to build a support at the 6,300 level. It's because when we look at the PSEi, actually during January, it was in a bullish divergence, which shows that the PSEi will start to recover. And fortunately, the favorable inflation rate and the favorable interest rate cut by the BSP has led to a almost 4 weeks increase in the PSEi. So the recent 2-week decline is actually, we're not actually surprised by it because we already expect it.
I was just going to say, actually, the economic indicators have not been bad. Inflation is very much tame right now, 1.8% in April. You've got the prospect of potentially 2 more rate cuts later in the year, so that should give markets a boost. But what's causing this pessimism? Is that just spillover from the rest of the region?
Yeah, I think during the past few weeks, especially last week, Japan recently released a disappointing PMI and export data, in which in turn has investors worried as they think that maybe the Trump's aggressive tariff has already taken a toll in the global economic growth. However, on the other hand, we think that the Philippine economy is not that affected by these global woes, as our export industry is not as big as other countries, such as Japan.
Yeah, it's still largely domestic consumer-driven story. Let's drill down into specific sectors. What's looking like a good bargain to you? What's looking cheap?
So for now, we think that the holdings sector is actually showing a bullish divergence. So
Holding sector.
Okay. So if you look at the holding sector, comparing it to the PSEi, the holding sector actually has sustained itself above the 100-day EMA compared to PSEi that is recently trading around the 50 EMA. So it's on a technical perspective, we are bullish on it. And also, as a consumer-driven economy, as you've said earlier, holdings companies such as SM, which are mostly its businesses are mostly consumer-driven businesses, in which we think that they will benefit the most from the robust consumer industry or sector that we have.
So it sounds like the story there is still diversification. The more diversified the revenue streams of a company, the better they're standing.
Yeah, especially if those companies are consumer-driven companies.
But what about for your clients, though? How do you advise them to diversify their portfolios? What else is there to look at?
So in terms of diversifying, we are recommending them to buy the undervalued stocks, of course. And in terms of the industries, we recommend banks. As we all know, during the past few months, banks has been the apple of the eye of the investors in the PSE. And of course, we are also looking on potential laggards such as the holding sector and consumer industry in specific, because the recent lower than expected inflation has already will greatly affect these consumer companies.
Oh, the banks, they're turning in record profits, which is amazing. Are we expecting this to continue even with the rate cuts?
Yeah, actually, we think that even though there is a interest rate cut, which will eventually maybe somehow contract their margins, we expect the loan growth or the growth of loans to eventually somehow mitigate that decrease in margins.
But still, on the whole, net earnings should be okay?
Yeah, we think the net earnings will still be okay.
What do you think of your utilities?
As of now, utilities actually, if you look at the utility companies, utility sector, they actually are one of those companies that actually increased despite of the global woes. As of now, utility sector or companies are now consolidating, in which we think we still have a buy signal for these companies.
Oh, you're still on buy for utilities?
Yeah, we still think that.
What have you got to sell on at the moment?
So we don't have a specific sell. However, we are really cautious on the property segment, of course. Okay. Even though that they are undervalued, I think the negative sentiment, as you can see on the technicals of these stocks, are actually sour and not that good looking due to the recent condo oversupply.
The condo oversupply, depending on which research firm you use, is running at least 2 to 3 years at the moment. We're not expecting any of that to change anytime soon. So that's the only reason you're a little bit bearish on properties. But in terms of fresh catalysts, we were just talking at the top of the hour about the lack of fresh catalysts. What is there to look forward to for investors?
For investors, of course, number one, we think that any tariff agreement or any positive tariff progress will benefit the market.
Even if you mean between the U.S. and EU?
U.S. and other economies, especially
It doesn't.
China.
Okay. Any other country?
Yeah,
it
any
could,
other country
it could give
could
a,
potentially boost the market. Second, we also think that the incoming economic data that will be released in June, the inflation data will be crucial because it will be the somehow it will help the BSP to navigate on as to whether or not they should continue cutting interest rate.
Finally, Jeco, your forecast for the benchmark index?
So for the benchmark index, so our forecast is at 6,800 to 7,000 level. So it's
By the end of the year?
By the end of the year.
Okay.
So it may not be as bullish as others forecast due to the uncertainties. So we don't expect a raging bull anytime soon.
It's not as bullish, but it's still it's still a long ways away.
Yeah.
You're positive we
we're
can
still
get there.
positive.
Okay, fantastic. We'll leave that there. Thank you so much for your time today. Jeconiah Nicolas
Thank you.
of First
It's a pleasure to be here.
Resources.